With age meaning nothing in its series, I think the best character to really lay that out for a fairy tale, I still believe, is August. Because when you look at characters who otherwise, well, they're really old, but that's because they're something like Zeref, an immortal, the White Witch who seemingly can, steal bodies. A dragon who, we don't know how their age, like, overall lasts. Like, what is old to them? What would be like an old man or something? But August, when you look at like the other kind of normal human mortal kind of old characters within fairy tale, you look at like Makarov, Hades, and August. Makarov is obviously the first one that we really see because we see he's extremely powerful, even though he's, starts out of the series as 88 years old. And from there, it's obviously he's very strong, like I said, but his age does get to him. He was 100% still affected by the fact that he was an old man. Like, he had heart problems that, could kill him if they got too severe. Though Makarov is just never going to die. That dude's going to live forever. But with that, you look at Hades, and Hades looked like he kind of moved past that, but it was because of his heart that he was able to pretty much ignore his age and have the vitality of somebody much younger. Whereas August never showed any signs of, letting his age get to him. He was able to project his power, his influence, his overall just kind of aura, as if the fact that he was almost 100 years old, was nothing to him. And that alone, I think, just really let him fit into this category the most. So August, as a character, I think he's extremely interesting from the fact that there were characters within the Spriggan 12 that were their own characters, and you had someone like Brandish or Irene. But August's character doesn't really work when you take him out of, the Spriggan 12. He's not really someone like Irene who has her own story that really just kind of like sits off on its own. Or Brandish, with Brandish's mother and Lucy's mother and how all that all went. But August, the thing that I really like about him is the way that he and multiple other members of the Spriggan 12, but August especially, were complementary pieces onto Zeref. Zeref having one thing about his character is, of all these characters, just extremely loyal to him, extremely dedicated to who he was. When you saw, like, in Ishgar, that he was kind of feared throughout history as this horrible living calamity that caused all these disasters. His name was, spoken in fear and in anguish. And then over in Alvarez, he was just regarded as their immortal emperor who guided their entire country and kept bringing everything further into the future, further into prosperity. And August was the most loyal of them all. He had been with Zeref since practically the start, like very, very early days of the kingdom. As far as we know, he was the most dedicated because when you look at certain other aspects, you have like Larcade, who Larcade was, a member of the Aetherius, and August hated him, and we got some context. Maybe it's, he doesn't always listen to orders and stuff, but in reality, I think the most likely thing was he hated him because the Aetherius were made by Zeref to kill himself, and August having such strong convictions of loyalty towards Zeref really just added on that to him of, obviously a being who exists to kill the person he's most loyal to is going to really upset him. And there are a lot of really interesting things about August that kind of you can kind of speculate and look at towards Zeref's character. Like the fact that when Zeref found August was about the age of Natsu when he died, and which led through Zeref's entire life and what really kickstarted everything in the story. Because, like I said, I've said before, if you take Zeref out of the story, fairy tale can't work. There's, the guild couldn't have ever been made because Mavis and crew never would have, got magic to take on Blue Skull. And she would have never learned Lost, so it never would have, even if you got to that point, some of they learned magic, they never would have stopped Yuri and, pulled him out of that dragon skeleton. You never would have had Natsu show up in the future, or any of the Dragon Slayers. Layla would have never died, so we don't know if Lucia even would have ever left to go join a guild. Urza never would have been born, really. And, you just kind of like stack all these things that really go to it, and it shows how much his character really was, tied to everything. But none of that is really what's important to August. August having, this conviction for his father, because his two weaknesses really in life were his parents, because he longed for them his whole life, but he never really got to, in reality, be with them, because he was with Zeref, but as August, not as Zeref's son. And no matter what happened for his character, even in the end, neither his mother or his father even knew who he really was, never knew that they had a child, which is, I still would put that as one of the saddest stories in fairy tale, because like it's not just like overall like his story is depressing, it's a sad story, but the fact that he passed with neither of them ever finding out really about this, never finding out the secret that he had, is just, it's such a sad tale. And I'm really hoping that if there's ever, if Mishima ends up doing like a fairy tale next generation thing, that maybe like, because that they're gonna fill in like certain roles with the characters. But I'm hoping that when they bring in like the character that's like some prodigy, it turns out like the secret is like it's August reincarnated. I would hope that so much. I think he deserves that as a character, because he got screwed over so heavily by just the story itself. I mean, not even that. Like, he never even got to be the center of a cover. I mean, Irene got to be on the center. Demaria got to be the center of a cover. Like, he just got screwed, and he was the leader of the Spriggan 12. He was the strongest, and he had one of the most interesting reveals in the series. And there's other stuff that I think are really nice, subtle, kind of like callbacks. Like, for instance, like August, because he was so powerful, was born with so much magic, he remembered everything since birth. And he has a very similar kind of ideal over what really is good and evil, light and dark, where these things reside. That's Hades, because August really says that like the only like most logical thing to follow would be love, whereas Hades, because he talks about, like August talked about, like really like light and darkness are like all perspectives and whatnot, and that's kind of like how Hades saw everything. Like I said, August remembered everything since birth, and who was August with when he was born, and the only person that we know he was with up until that point was Hades. So there's the potential that he got that kind of ideal that really led him further in his path from Hades, which I think would be a really neat thing to tie to, because Hades was just such an intriguing character on his own. But like how if he influenced another really intriguing character, someone like August, that would just double over for both of them. But like I said, August's character, I think, just works so well as this additional piece of Zeref's really like what Legion Armada army. He added such a nice extra flair, because when you looked at all the Spriggan 12, they weren't really like, oh, we're the evil bad guys. I mean, there were someone like Bloodman. Bloodman came off as pretty much like an evil demon guy, like liked killing and just being a bad guy. But August, like when you look at like Brandish was not really. She didn't want to do this war. She just wanted to be in her position, do what she needed to, and just be lazy and have fun. And then you had August, who August was extremely reasonable. He Natsu, Lucy, Brandish, and Happy went to go talk to him. Oh, and Mest. Why was Mest there? I hate Mest. But while he was there, he was willing to negotiate them peacefully. He was willing to try and figure out a middle ground, try and figure out what they could do without causing any more violence. He showed like an extra position that even though they're the enemy, they aren't bad, they aren't evil. That was again like an aspect about this Brigand 12 that I really liked, is a lot of them just came off as like opposing sides of a war. They weren't really vile, evil, like conniving people. Like even look at like the stuff that Demaria did that was bad. Like Demaria liked to like mess with her opponents, and then later when she became kind of like down that like vile route, it's because she was pissed off with what they did to Brandish. They kind of like shook her position a little bit, and in her eyes that they like kind of defiled what she saw as her friend. But August, just the only thing that really kind of like wavered who August was his obvious, parental issues when he saw Gildarts and Kana. I would be very curious of how that whole encounter would have went if Kana never showed up. Probably would have resulted in a dead Gildarts, but it's so intriguing to me that his character, he's very overlooked, and I think it's because his story, he like I said, he doesn't have like a big standalone. He doesn't have something that like you pluck August out and you can just tell the tale. Like you need to have Zeref and Mavis tied to him to really like get the whole extent of who he is, which in itself is like, okay, like you can try and say something about his character, like I said, not having his own kind of like standalone positions, but it's the fact that he ties into these two other really big important characters that I find the most intriguing thing about him. And then obviously there were There were fun things about August. They're like this design. Dude had a sick mustache. His staff itself is obviously his staff. Honestly, I think was one of the more interesting. I keep saying interesting, more just appealing things about his design because of how simplistic and yet cool it was. It was just this very old staff with like a weird black gem on it, and he further pushed one of the things I really wish was like a constant in fairy tale is maybe like powerful wizards have staffs as just like a thing because we already saw it with like Hades used to have a staff, Irene had a staff, August having a staff. I don't know. I really wish that was just one of those things. Like I thought maybe like early on in fairy tale was going to be like an important aspect. Is maybe just staffs are really like a sign. I don't know, but he himself being as powerful as he was, having essentially like at least practically every magic within the series. Like they even said that he's pretty much mastered every magic, and the way that his original magic really makes sense, the way he could do that is, he sees a magic as long as it is not like a based off an item. Just bam, he's learned it. He knows how to use it. He can also use it to an extent of his power, not his opponent, so he's able to make it way more powerful. And he's now immune to it, which is extremely hacks. And then his only weakness to it is that he can't copy things that are specifically placed within like items. Like he can't take, like they even get an example, Lucy's keys, like because of her celestial spirit magic stems out of the gate keys. He can't copy that magic. He'd be able to copy something like Aranometria or something, but he wouldn't be able to like, oh well, I cancel out your summoning of Leo by making a fake key. I wonder if like he had maybe an item that could turn into other items, and maybe he could somehow figure that out. I don't know. Maybe some form of like if he had like a tool that he could replicate that in on top of like his own thing. But I feel like that would make him too broken. I am really hoping that at some point in the series we see his spell, like his big end spell, Ars Magia, finally used. Because there are spells in Fairy Tail that were hyped up and really interesting and cool that were never shown. Abyss Break, we still have not seen Abyss Break. Genesis Zero was not fully shown until the Starry Sky arc because it was shown in the anime with the Zero fight, but Zero's that whole thing was non-canon because it was just an extra bit in the anime for Natsu pretty much to get it sucked into a dimension until like his mind numbed and then he would just be gone. Whereas, even though that was the later, shown effect, that part was not canon, and we saw it with Midnight. With Ars Magia we still haven't seen, and obviously it's probably one of the newer, like, big spells that was brought up and, getting ready to get cast but never fully went off. I'm hoping we get something like Toka, the White Witch, or just any character around there. Just some character that is just like, maybe not like, oh, this is my magic, I'm proficient in this. It's just spells, because there's a difference seemingly Fairy Tail between like having a branch of magic, you have something like Dragon Slayer magic, here's my element and all my techniques and stuff involved, versus it's like a spell that's like a standalone, something like Ethereon, something like Abyss Break, something like Ars Magia. And that obviously led up to the last moments of August's character when he just got annoyed by guild arts and Kana, and he said, screw it, I'm just going to take all of you guys out, because no matter what he did, Zeref and Mavis were going to survive because of their immortality. He just would have completely wiped out all of Fiore, which is impressive because the dude wasn't just going to wipe a country off the map. Fiore is huge because the canon distance between Magnolia and Hargion is 370 kilometers, and the distance, the pretty much like east to west of Fiore is like 6,500 kilometers, which makes it humongous, and it's a small country in Fairy Tail, but still, August was not only going to wipe it out, he was going to melt it. He was pretty much just going to reduce it into just molten rock and just bubble it over, which is still one of the strongest like feats that would have been would have happened. And obviously, you got bigger stuff with like big deal dragons, but August, I still see him as the strongest human, because when you look at something like, okay, Zeref was, an immortal. He's kind of like a different kind of being if you look at him. Someone like the White Witch as well. Dragons. Ank'Saram is a god. Natsu and Ko, like they're pretty much just becoming dragons slowly because of the way Dragon Slayer magic works. Even though I'd say Natsu will be able to beat August in the long run, if you just put them in front of each other, I don't think that Natsu currently could beat August. The only thing he really has that could damage August is Dragon Force, but we don't know how long Natsu can really fight in it, because We've seen he can activate it at will, but it's really just one big attack. And, I imagine he can sustain it for a long period of time for normal combat, but he would need that big all-out attack to kill August. And August has all these hacks that would, make it hard for him to hit on top of it. But other than that, August, I enjoyed his character. Like I said, I'm hoping he gets somehow reincarnated. Out of all the characters in the series that were missed, there's a lot of characters I love. Zero, even though Zero was pretty straightforward character, I really liked his character. Mardgear, love Mardgear. I wish he would come back, but the difference between him and August is Mardgear had a great run for only a one arc villain, and everything involved his character, it opened and closed really well. August, I think, got kind of screwed over a little bit in some aspects, but I think it'd be really cool to see him eventually come back. Because there's one other aspect I'm wondering about Fairy Tail is maybe like there are certain ways to resurrect beyond like the reason that Zeref and Mavis, there's the lookalikes at the end, in chapter 545, is because they kind of messed with the boundaries of life and death, and when they cheated out a god, and that's the reason why Makarov came back, but seemingly why they kind of reincarnated and were able to live a happy life again. But we will see. We will see. There's no confirmation of whether or not Hiro Mishima wants to do a next gen thing. I don't know. I think he will. Like, it's still a really popular series, and as he knows, the thing is, you can look at like next gen series and know where they fumble. I mean, like Boruto's anime, I believe, is actually very profitable and very successful in terms of a series. The manga is just slow, and the anime just has a lot of filler. But the anime still does really well profit-wise, last time I checked, so I don't think that really matters in the large scale of things. But Hiro Mishima, seemingly since ending Fairy Tail, is he's been very consistent with the quality of the series. I still think that was there was something with his editor, because immediately after 545 happened, he got a new editor on Fairy Tail for Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest and Eden Zero, and they've both been super consistent and great since then. But we'll see. Like I said, other than that, I'm gonna end this for August. Praying that he gets something. I mean, even if that doesn't get some form of reincarnated as like the Kid Prodigy in a next gen series, maybe like there's like a spin-off where we just get like a couple chapters of each member of the Spriggan 12 before the war, and we get some more insight to August, both as a character, his capabilities. I think that would be pretty nice. Because one thing that did actually bother me about the arc, but it's not really an important thing, is that all these Spriggan seemingly had like their own little unit, except for Jacob, because Jacob acted alone because that was the way he liked to fight. But we never got to see something for like August. And obviously there were a couple members we didn't see like their own personal unit, but August I think would have been the most interesting, just because of the fact that he, is this big hyped wizard king guy. Other than that, comment below, tell me what you thought about this video and this character. Obviously went a little bit longer than I planned, a couple extra minutes, because I have a lot to say about August, and I do appreciate like the way that his character ended up tying into the story. But other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, befriend the like button and the subscribe button, and check out my other videos. And that, I appreciate everyone who's already subscribed, and I thank you all for listening. Bye.